Welcome back. Scott Cibucci here. It is episode number 3 of our Go Farther podcast series, all focused on how we can do more, be happy, and surprise yourself. It is right now, it is a Tuesday morning. I am traveling. I'm down in Las Vegas. And so I'm taking this recording from my hotel room. So things aren't exactly perfect, but perfect is the enemy of done, as they say. I am in Las Vegas for a conference on behalf of a client. And one of the things I got to do is get this podcast out to you. So I'm doing with what I have available to me, which is some bad lighting and a screen behind me from the hotel, curtains, and my earbuds, as opposed to my normal setup, but it's all good. Episode number 3, let's dig in very quickly here. Let's rock and roll, shall we? So episode number 3, what I want to talk about today in this Go Farther series is focus. And there's a little saying that I came up with. It goes like this: focus on now, worry about later. Focus on now, worry about later. So the genesis of this little saying, it was something that sort of randomly popped to mind back when I was teaching. So in years past, I've been a university adjunct instructor, professor at different schools across the world. I've taught in Kazakhstan, I've taught online, and I've also taught at a business school in San Francisco called Holt International Business School. It's an international program, students from like literally all over the world. I had people from Georgia, not US Georgia, like the other Georgia, Latin America, Asia, Europe. I mean, people from Africa, Australia. I mean, people from all over the world, students from all over the world, mostly in their early to mid 20s in a business program. And I was teaching this class. I taught a bunch of different classes there: sales, management, product, marketing. And it was getting on towards the end of the term, end of the quarter. And I could tell the students before one of the classes, as we were trying to get kicked off of the lecture, they just started asking a bunch of questions about the project. They were asking a bunch of questions about the final exam, and they were starting to tell me, oh, they don't have enough time to do everything. I kind of fielded their questions for a little bit, and I realized there was just this central sense of overwhelm across all of the students. And at that moment, I said, guys, just focus on now and worry about later. It just kind of came out of my mouth. And I explained that to him. I said, look, yes, you have this project for my class. You have other projects that you have to work on. You've got your final exams coming up that you need to study for. Some of you are graduating. So you're thinking about, like, how do I move out of my apartment? Am I going to go back home to Venezuela or Colombia or back to Georgia? Or am I going to stay here in San Francisco? You're interviewing for jobs. Some of you are trying to get internships. Some are trying to get full-time positions. You got to worry about your visas. Like, if you do get a job, is that company going to sponsor you for a visa in order to stay longer outside your student visa? I mean, yeah, you got a lot of stuff going on. Right now, in this moment, we're in this class and we have this lecture and we're going to talk about this topic right now. And this is what you need to focus on, because the things you're going to learn in this lecture are going to help you with your term paper. They're going to help you with your project. They're going to help you with your final exam. And if you start worrying about all the other things that you can't do anything about in these next 90 minutes, then you're not going to get anything out of the time that we have here together. So just focus on now and worry about later. Now, I don't know how many students in the class it actually helped, but for whatever reason in that moment, it did seem to settle them down, and we ended up having a good class, a good lecture. So this is the topic I want to talk about today. And let's kind of talk about why this is so important, first of all. This concept of focusing on now and worrying about later. I think for most of us, if you're listening to this podcast, you're the kind of person that has just like lots of stuff to do. There is so much to do. I always think about my life in kind of a multi-dimensional, like we live in this sort of multi-dimensional world. And what do I mean by that is, like, obviously we're moving forward in time, first and foremost, right? We wake up, we have our morning, afternoon, our evening, we go to sleep at night. That's just the way this is the way time works, right? But throughout that day, any day, there's so many multiple responsibilities. You might have responsibilities around your family. You've got responsibilities around your work and your business. You've got responsibilities around yourself. And so if we take any of those three, families, work, self, you might have, and probably do have, multiple things going on in your family life. So, like for me, okay, I've got my wife, and she, within her world, she has her work stuff. She has the management of our animal pets. We have horses, goats, and chickens, dogs, cats. Like she mostly takes care of she fully takes care of the horses, chickens, and goats. I don't really do much there. but still we have to worry about dog walks. We have to make sure the cats are fed. Our cats are getting older. And so we're always worried about their health now, and making sure that they're doing well. Then of course she wants to exercise. She wants to stay in shape. She wants to do her fitness stuff. Right. So then I've got my son, right? So my son has school, and within his school, he's got his day-to-day school. He's got middle school coming up now. And so we're talking about classes he's going to take and electives and all these other kind of things. So he's thinking about those things, and I've got to help him with that. He's got field trips at school that he's thinking about, and we got to prepare him for. Then he also, outside of school, he has soccer and he has his friends, right? And then, so like even within family, I've got two other people that are important in my immediate family. And then I've had extended family, right? My parents. And I got to think about things that might be coming up with them. My mom's having knee replacement surgery, totally normal knee replacement surgery, but it's still something I've got to make sure that I'm checking in with her on, right? So I've got my family stuff. And then within work, for me personally, within work, right, I've got multiple clients that I've got to make sure I'm delivering for, teaching workshops. I'm going to events like this conference that I'm at, travel I've got to manage. I've got marketing and sales for the business. I'm managing the team. So multiple things going on potentially every day around work. And then there's myself, right? So for me, I've got my own self-care, my sleep, my diet, how am I managing myself? I've got the training that I'm doing for races and all of the exercise and fitness. I'm training on top of that, training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I want to keep advancing there. So, I've got my own health. So, recently went to managing different health issues I have. Again, nothing terrible, but just things I have to manage. I've got a torn rotator cuff, I've got arthritis in my knee. And so these are things that I'm managing on top of everything else. So like there's a lot of things that each and every one of us are dealing with. You have maybe some of these exact same things, but I'm sure that you have some of the same sort of spirit of what I've just talked about there. And I think underlying all that, there's kind of this fear is like, how do I get it all done? How am I going to get all of these things done? And so at least like from my perspective, again, and everything I'm sharing here, just from my perspective in hopes that maybe something in here might be helpful for you. We want to, of course, we want to be productive, right? We want to be efficient with our time. We want to help other people. Like I'm always looking for, how am I helping a client? How am I helping with my family? How am I helping with my son? How am I contributing to the greater good of the people around me? We want to make sure we're personally growing. I want to feel like I'm growing. I want to feel like I'm learning. Am I doing new things in jiu-jitsu? Am I learning new things at work? Am I becoming a better parent? Am I becoming a better partner and spouse for my wife? And then at the end of the day, of course, and the reason that we're maybe you're listening to this podcast is that you want to be your best self, right? You want to do more, be happy, and surprise yourself. You want to go farther. And so this brings me back to the theme of this particular episode, which is focus on now, and worry about later. So let me just give you a couple quick examples that I jotted down from a business standpoint, and hopefully maybe these will resonate with you a little bit. So two different ones come to mind as I'm working with clients. So as I'm working with startup founders, I'm working with their teams and helping them with their sales motion, helping them with their sales process. A couple things come up on a pretty consistent basis. So as an example, let's say I've got a client and they're going to the big industry conference. So they're down here in Las Vegas, or they've got some big event in Chicago. And one of the things we might work on in the weeks heading into that conference is, how do you organize your conference selling strategy? Okay. How am I identifying who's going to be there? How am I booking meetings with the key people I know I want to meet with that match my ideal customer profile? How do I make time for my own customers? How do I balance late stage deals, middle stage deals, along with prospecting and new lead generation? And then what's the outreach strategy? How am I using LinkedIn and email and phone calls and all that stuff to fill my dance card? And so that could be, several weeks on end before a conference. So you make sure you show up to Las Vegas or Chicago feeling like, hey, this is going to be a productive couple of days here, because you want to be productive on behalf of the business. But then, of course, for me, I'm always thinking, well, I'm here, which is great for me and great for the business, great for my client. Meanwhile, back home, now my wife is managing everything at home. So she's got all of her work and all of her research, and then she's got to get my son to school, and then she's got to walk the dog, and then she's got to manage the horses, and then she wants to be able to exercise and do all the things she wants to do, and make sure that there's meals on the table for my son, right? So it's just like I've got all of that as well. So my philosophy is like, if I'm going to this event, I'm going to be damn sure I make everything out of it, every minute, every hour. I'm going to make sure I get the most out of it, because if I'm here, I need to be here. I need to focus on this now. And then that way I can make sure when I get back home, I can pick things up and take over a lot of the things, so that my wife can then go back and maybe work on the things that she wasn't able to work on because I'm here, right? Maybe she got shorter days at work because she has to do school pickup and dog walks and everything else, right? And so as I'm working with clients, a lot of times, what'll inevitably happen each and every time as we're working on setting up these meetings and even starting to do the outreach, even before meetings are booked, this is where the future questions come in, which is like, oh, well, like, what if I get these meetings with some of these large accounts? And like, how do I make sure that I'm asking the right questions? Because most of these meetings are only going to be 15 or 20 minutes. I want to make the most out of that time. And then, okay, so let's say I have that good meeting with an executive vice president at Wells Fargo, and that leads to a product demo 2 weeks later. So if I'm in that product demo, like, how do I know exactly what to show in the product demo so that it's relevant to that EVP at Wells Fargo? And then if the demo goes well, like pricing, because we've never sold to a bank as large as Wells Fargo. Like most of the other customers have been in sort of the mid-bank range. And like, I don't even know how to price this thing. I don't want to leave any money on the table, but I also want to make sure that I'm sensitive to budgets because I know things are tight right now. And then if they do say yes, like how do we actually implement with a bank as big as Wells Fargo? Because we've never done that. And I don't think I have enough team. And then we've got other customers, and you can see the trail. And I'm sure you've done this yourself. And we've all done it. It's like, what about this? And then this, and then this, and then this. And that's where I'll come back and say, like, hey, those are champagne problems. Like, focus on now, and worry about all that stuff later. Like, let's make sure we get the meetings with the EVP of Wells Fargo, and those like them. Let's make sure that you have a full dance card. And once we do that over these next couple of weeks, in the last couple of days before you go to the conference, then we'll spend time on how to manage your meetings and what questions to ask and what research you should be doing, right? And then once you execute on those meetings, let's talk about then who else you should bring into those demos and how to prepare for those product demos that you'll do a week or two after the conference. And then once you source and understand their situation and their problem and their predicament, then you can start thinking about pricing. So it's this and then this and then this. It's not if, it's this and this and then this and then this. So that's a really common thread. And so it's just pulling yourself back, or me pulling these clients back to say, like, the now thing is, let's nail this outreach. Let's make sure these emails that are going out are really focused on a good value prop specific to that particular executive. Let's make sure we're doing the right research. Has that executive been on a podcast? Are they speaking at the event? What are the things that they seem to care about based on their LinkedIn posts? Let's do that now and worry about the other stuff later. Another example with clients comes up all the time is hiring. Like, oh, we're thinking about hiring in the second half of this year because, if we start closing some of these deals in Q1 and Q2, then we're going to have more runway. We're going to have more revenue. I'm going to need to hire some people on the implementation side. I definitely want to start bringing in an AE in. So like, how am I going to hire an AE, an account executive, in the second half of the year? Like, I don't even know what kind of AE. Should I hire somebody that has like 20 years experience in the industry? Should I hire somebody that's a little younger and a little scrappier that I can teach them? But then that person, I'm going to have to teach them the industry, and they might not have the full sales acumen that I need. But on the other hand, the 20-year sales veteran, they can get up to speed quickly, but they're going to be more expensive. And how do I know they know how to work in a startup? And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, it's freaking March right now. Yes, it's important to think about what is going to be your hiring plan. And these are all great questions that you should be asking. The now thing is, let's get a couple of these deals over the line in Q1, because you've got 3 late stage deals right now. 2 of them are moving into contract. 1 of them could move into contract in the next 2 weeks. What are the things that we need to do now to get at least 1 of those across the line? How do we get 2 of them across the line, if not in Q1 by April, so that you've got the momentum, so that you have the revenue, so that you have the ability to then hire those people? So focus on now, worry about all that stuff later. Now, how do we translate that into day-to-day? So like, how do I personally use this? So for me, just as I'm recording this podcast, it's now 5:47 a.m. So for me, and I think about my day here at this conference, at this event, so I'm a planner, right? I find that planning is one of the easiest ways to help you focus on now and worry about later. So like, I get up every morning, I do what's called morning pages. That's something I learned to do about 15 years ago. And just basically every morning I just journal. And part of that journaling is just helping me to plan out my day. And so as part of that day, I'm mapping out, what is my day going to look like? What are my work priorities? What are my home duties? How am I going to exercise? Do I have soccer practice that night? How do I make sure that I'm balancing that out. How am I thinking about my diet? When am I going to get to bed at night to make sure I get enough sleep for what I need to do the next day? Right. And so by planning that out, planning gives you the ability to focus because it gives you structure, it gives you predictability. And so for me this morning, it's okay, get up at 4 a.m., go downstairs, get a coffee, come back, do morning pages, prepare for podcast. Next thing, record podcast. Next thing, hotel workout. Next thing, pack up, shower, get to the venue for breakfast. Next thing, 5 meetings back to back to back. Next thing, afternoon. So because I've already built the structure in, because I already have some predictability, when I go to do that next thing, whether it's right now focusing on recording this podcast or the next thing, which is going to do my workout, it allows me to just focus on that thing in that moment. And when I'm in that moment, for example, when I go down to the hotel gym to work out, I just have some really basic rules, right? I don't check my phone in between sets if I'm going to do some pull-ups or I'm going to do some kettlebell swings or something, and I've got a minute of rest. I'm not going to pick up my phone and check my email. I'm not going to look at Slack. I'm not going to look at the news. Like, why? It's just a distraction, right? What I'm going to focus on in between the sets is like, how is my breathing? How am I feeling? Do I need a drink of water? Right? As I'm doing those sets, I'm thinking about each repetition. Okay, was that good form? How does that feel? Does that feel heavy? Does it feel light? Do I feel strong today? If I feel a little weak, that's okay. Some days are not going to be the best, right? I don't think about like, oh, like how am I going to fill the last few meetings, open times that I have in the afternoon? I've got a great morning back, like stacked up from 8 in the morning until about 12:30. Now I've got a bunch of open times. Now part of me is like, I need to fill those open times, but right now I can't fill those open times. And I certainly can't fill those open times when I'm doing kettlebell swings or pull-ups, right? So this is where in that workout, I'm thinking, I just need to focus on this workout because this workout's going to go from roughly, 6:15 till about 7 a.m. And when I'm done the workout, then I can come back and worry about how am I going to fill that time? How can I spend 15 minutes while I'm eating breakfast to DM a few people on LinkedIn or to send out a couple more emails or to look up 2 or 3 people from a couple banks I haven't talked to on behalf of this client. So it's the focus on now, and then worry about later, right? So I've got a couple of quick tips, quick strategies. Some of these you might have heard before. Some of these might be new. Either way, again, like my purpose here is just really simply to share some ideas that at some point you might be able to adopt and adapt them. They might be useful to you. The first strategy for me, again, that comes back to how do I focus on now and worry about later, is how do I take things away? How do I take things away? So I feel like I schedule pretty realistically, but I also schedule in some ways very optimistically. So when I say I schedule realistically, one of the things I'm good about is I will add buffers into my calendar throughout the course of the day. So let me give you an example of how I stack a day. So I looked at my calendar. I went back to February 29th and I looked at my day, and my day starts at 4 a.m. In my calendar, I have this reminder. It says 4 a.m. club. It's a club that I invented called the 4 a.m. club. I invented this back during the pandemic. And what I found is that because of all of the other things I needed to manage at home, when my son was home away from school, when everything was shut down, the best time for me to get anything productive done was to get up at 4 a.m. because I could have 3 pretty good hours before he woke up and the rest of the house woke up. And I've just sort of kept with that. That's on my calendar, right? The next thing that's on my calendar is from 5 a.m. till 6:30 a.m. There's a block of time that says finish FinTech webinar presentation. Now I added that to my calendar, not because I think I don't have open Calendly or somebody can book a time with me at 5:15 a.m. I added to my calendar so that I know exactly what I'm going to be working on in that hour and a half time block. That's part of the planning, right? After that, I had a pipeline review to work with one of the clients that I have to make sure that their team is keeping deals moving forward. After that, I had 2 more calls with this particular client. After that, in the morning time, I had this FinTech webinar that I was teaching. It was a pro bono webinar that I was teaching to folks that wanted to get some help selling to banks, selling to insurance companies, selling to financial institutions. And as part of that webinar, I have a 15-minute buffer before and a 15-minute buffer after. The 15-minute buffer before is to just give myself some time to get ready, do a quick tech check, make sure I have water, make sure I'm all set to go, and my lighting and all is set up. And then 15 minutes after is just to decompress, deliver what I can in those 90 minutes, focus in those 90 minutes specifically and everything I have on those people that show up to this webinar so that afterwards I can decompress and then focus on the rest of the day. Then later on, I have office hours for our clients in our coaching program, big 90-minute block there. And then I had two other one-on-one client calls. So basically from 5 a.m. to 4 p.m., I'm stacked every single hour. But one of the things that I do is to make sure that I add these buffers. So I schedule realistically. Now that's a heavy schedule, and that's not every day. There are, a day or two a week I might have this stacked schedule. But first, the planning allows me to know exactly what's going on in the day. It allows me to focus on that thing that's in front of me in that hour, whether it's like from 5 a.m. to 6:30 is like the one thing I got to do. I'm not going to open up Slack. I'm not going to open up email. I'm not going to focus on anything else for those 90 minutes other than making sure I get this FinTech webinar presentation completely polished, done. So that when I get to that pipeline review with the client, I can make sure in that time, I'm not checking other email. I'm not looking at Slack. I can focus on those account managers and those deals in their pipeline and make sure that they get my best for them, my best self. Right. So now the other thing that comes with stacking this goes back to that first strategy, which is how do I take things away? So on that same Thursday, I have two personal time blocks, one in the morning where there's a jujitsu class that's from 6 to 7 a.m. I have it in my calendar. I don't always go. In fact, I very infrequently go anymore to that morning class, but it's on my calendar. Now, optimistically, my thoughts were, well, if I can get this FinTech webinar presentation done in an hour, then I could jet over to class from 6 to 7 and then get back in time to do this pipeline review. Now, I could have really tried to push for that, but all that does is create pressure on me. It's probably going to lower the quality of my work so that I'm going to spend less time in the presentation. When I get to jiu-jitsu class, I'm going to be rushing. I'm not going to have a great experience there. And then I'm going to be rushing home and I'm not going to be prepared for that pipeline review. So the easy thing to do, just take that, delete it from my calendar. Now, the same thing in the evening. Thursday evening, jiu-jitsu class, 6 to 8 p.m. Now, that's a class I almost always go to. I love going to that class on Thursday night for different reasons. Now, I also know this weekend, that week coming up on that Thursday was on Saturday was when I was leaving to come down to this conference in Las Vegas. So I'm already thinking about a little bit ahead. What do I need to do in order to make sure I'm ready for this conference? Well, I need to pack. I need to get some things ready. I also want to make sure I'm doing a little extra at home because I know for the days I'm away that my wife's going to have to do the dog walks and do all the things that need to be happening around the house. So one of the easiest ways I could reduce my stress and worry and reduce my anxiety is I just simply said, you know what? This is just going to be a week I'm not making it to that class. And it's okay because I know I'm disciplined enough that I'm going to go to the next one and the next one and the next one after that. I just simply removed it from the calendar. And instead, I just did a short garage workout, went outside into my garage for 30 minutes, did a quick lift workout, took the dog for a walk so that I could get that done and help out a little bit more. And then that allowed me to start thinking ahead and doing a little bit of pre-packing, sort of prep on Thursday night so that I could be home, be focused, get good sleep on Thursday night, not come back from jiu-jitsu class completely wrecked so that I'm not sleeping well because I'm so tired and so wrecked that my Friday is actually much more productive so I can get more done in preparation. So by taking those two things away, it actually helped me to focus throughout the course of the day because I had a few less things that I had to worry about. So some of the things you can do is like look at your meeting calendar. If you have a 30-minute meeting, does it have to be 30 minutes? Can you reduce it to 20 and give yourself a 10-minute buffer to get some food, get some water, use the bathroom if you need to do that between meetings, right? Are there some meetings in your calendar that maybe aren't that important that you could have somebody else on your team take over? Maybe you can delegate that out and it's a good opportunity for you to learn how to delegate. And it's a good opportunity for your team members to learn how to run those kinds of meetings. Maybe you don't have to be on that one call with the customer. Maybe you don't have to be on that one call with the prospect. So those are ways you can start taking things away that will free yourself up and give you the ability to focus on the most important things on your calendar. So that's strategy number one. The second thing that helps me focus on now and worry about later is really something simple. You've heard this before. Turn off your notifications on your phone. Like I don't have Slack notifications. I don't have email notifications. I turn off every single notification for every single app that's on my phone. The only notification that I have on my phone is my text. That reason that I have a text notification is because my wife and I are constantly texting each other through the day. If I'm at home and she's at home, it's double checking, okay, are you picking up Benjamin from school or am I? I know we talked about it. I just wanted to double check. Or, hey, listen, I thought I was going to be able to pick him up, but things are running late. Hey, Scott, do you mind, taking can you take him, can you take him home from school? Right. So I just need to have that. I need to make sure that if my wife and I want to communicate that we're able to do that. That's the only notification I have left on my phone. The third thing that I do is, as I just talked about, I time block like crazy. I schedule everything. Everything goes into one calendar. And the reason I do that is so I have complete visibility of what's going on each and every day, each and every week. And then I color code my calendar based on specific activities. So my color code, for example, is anything that's personal is purple. Purple's my favorite color. So if I'm blocking out a jujitsu class, if it's soccer practice for my son, if it's something I'm doing with family, all of that stuff is purple, including evenings and weekends. I block that stuff out. Like soccer games on Saturday, I block out. What time are we leaving to go to the game? What time is the game? What time are we going to be home? And I do that, and I share that with my wife so that she can know, hey, while you guys are away, I'm going to go to the barn and check out the horses. Right? She knows, okay, you're going to be gone from 9:30 to 1:30. Great time for me to go to the barn since you guys aren't going to be home. And that way, when we do get back together Saturday afternoon, we can hang out. Right? So I time block everything and I schedule everything. Other stuff that, like for me, stuff that's in green is anything related to coaching, anything related to clients. If it's client related, it's green on my calendar. And it's green because that's I want to go, and it's green because it's money. Like this is how we make money, is having clients, and I want to make sure that those clients are happy and getting results, and that's why it's green, right? Holds or little buffers are in blue. Anything that's in blue is just like a time block that I'm blocking in between meetings. And I've got a few other colors, but what that allows me to do is visually, I can look at a calendar and know exactly what kind of day or week is this going to be. Do I have lots of green stuff? Do I have a lot of more personal stuff that I have to make sure I'm balancing? And do I have any blue in my calendar at all? Am I blocking off enough times for things? Sales related stuff, marketing related stuff I'm doing for the company, that's orange. Is this a week where maybe I've got a lot of orange, or maybe this is a week where I don't have any orange in my calendar? And that's okay, as long as the following week there is more orange. So I just need to know visually how I'm balancing myself out. So that's schedule everything, be fanatical about that so that you know exactly what you've got ahead of you. The last thing I'll say is make sure that you say no to stuff. Other than just taking stuff off of your calendar, delegating things off to other people, removing things from your calendar, one of the best ways to do that is just not add it in the first place. So be willing to say no to requests for meetings. Be willing to say no to a 90-minute meeting, but maybe say, look, I can do 20 minutes. And also be willing to say no throughout the course of the day. If you are focusing on something, for example, if I'm in my office and it's afternoon after my son is home from school, there's some times where, I like being home so that he can come in, and if we want to chat and he needs help with stuff or we just want to talk, we can do it. And sometimes he'll knock on my door and he's like, hey, Dad, listen, this thing with the computer, the internet doesn't seem to be working very fast. Can you check the router? Or listen, I'm like a little bit hungry. Like, can you get me a snack? Sometimes I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. Like, let's go check it out, because I'm not working on anything specific, or I'm just doing something that's pretty light work. But there's other times where I might have a focused time block. Maybe I've got to get something out for a client and it's got to get out by the end of the day. I need to send them a framework, or I need to send them some notes from the meeting. And they're expecting those meeting notes by 5 o'clock by the end of the day, so they have them to prepare for something tomorrow. And that's where I'll just say, hey, yep, happy to help you with those things. Can you give me 30 minutes? So these next 30 minutes, I promise, and this is the way I phrase it. I'm like, I promised somebody I would do something for them. It's only going to take me 30 more minutes. If you're really that hungry, in the kitchen, there's a couple apples, there's some chips you can get, there's some strawberries in the fridge. If you don't mind helping yourself, you can go do that. Or look, if the internet's a little laggy, I totally get it. I know that's frustrating. I promise you'll go help you after I finish what I'm doing here. Is that cool? And I'll say, yeah, no problem. So being willing to say no to those little interruptions as well, because if it seems like, oh, the internet thing's a quick thing, I can go do that and get back in time to get this thing out to my client by the 5. Well, what if the internet thing becomes a bigger thing? What if I can't figure out the router situation, right? Or what if the snack isn't just a bowl of strawberries, but it turns into like, oh, you know what? I'm actually like more hungry than a snack. Can you make me a quesadilla? Now, what I thought was like a 3-minute, wash some strawberries off, make sure he's good, turns into 15 minutes because I'm making a quesadilla for him, right? So being willing to say no to those little minor requests, those little interruptions, is really important as well. So those are my strategies. That's, the theme here. Focus on now, worry about later. Definitely recommend just, start easing into the stuff. Start with turning off some notifications. Start with blocking out some time. Start with avoiding checking your phone during other meetings or while you're doing certain things. Make sure you're blocking out some time for personal things. I promise you, if you focus on now and worry about later, it will help you do more. It will help you be happy. It will help you surprise yourself. Go farther.